Hey everybody, I'm Tarek Merchant. I'm here today with a good friend of mine, Mike Belmonte from Carnegie Mellon University, head men's coach. So welcome to the show, Mike.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome. So we've been talking a little bit about doing this and giving some content to student athletes or families about you, about your college. So why don't you give everybody a little background about yourself and where you started with tennis as a kid and how you got into coaching?
Sure. Well, going back to the childhood years, I was pretty much a multi-sport athlete. Tennis was the summer fun thing at the pool, at the local club. You know, started off just very casual, playing with my friends. But that was just specifically in the summertime, and then in the fall it was soccer, in the winter it was basketball, in the spring it was baseball, and it continued that way for me for several years, really.
So when did you first start playing and what was your first sport, and when did you first start playing that sport?
Very first sport would have been basketball.
Okay.
My dad was a basketball player.
Okay.
So
did he play college?
He played into college, and so basketball was my first love. That's what I thought I was gonna do. I was going to basketball camps in junior high school, and again, tennis was just kind of always a sport that I really loved and I played a lot of, but it was just kind of on the side.
Right.
I didn't start getting better at tennis until later, really after junior high school. So.
Oh, really? So you were already in high school before tennis became something?
Yeah, I didn't start playing year-round tennis until probably my freshman year of high school, when I finally started playing indoor tennis. You know, in the Northeast, you got to play indoor tennis.
And where did you grow up?
In Pittsburgh.
In Pittsburgh. Okay, so you grew up in Pittsburgh. You know, basketball was your first love. Your dad played it. You played other sports as well, and then tennis was kind of a summer thing, right, for you?
Tennis was summer, yep.
And then you started to go into high school. So tell me more, when you realized that tennis was going to become your number one sport, and basketball and some of the other sports you were playing, which I'm sure you were really good at, right? That you played at a high level. When did you make that transition from saying, okay, here's a sport I love, tennis, and I do it in the summers, but predominantly I'm playing basketball, and what was the other sport you were playing a lot of?
Soccer and baseball.
Soccer and baseball, okay. And so now I'm into high school, and when does that switch turn on and say, look, I'm going to focus all my energy now on tennis and instead of the other sports?
Well, one of the big things was that I was only 5'4" in ninth grade.
No way.
I was a runt.
And how tall are you now?
6'1".
Okay, so you're definitely a late bloomer.
I was a late bloomer in school, but it worked. For basketball, I was a natural point guard, so I had a role.
Okay.
I had a role on my team. There was a future along that path that I saw, but then I grew pretty fast, and I became very awkwardly skinny, and my coordination in basketball went down a little bit. And what I discovered was all of a sudden I could hit the crap out of the ball serving.
Yeah.
So I had a really good serve right away, just pretty fundamentally sound, and my coach worked with me on it. So all of a sudden I was getting all the success in tennis that I wasn't having in basketball. Basketball was going the other way, tennis was going up. So all of a sudden it got more of my attention. I was like, wow, this is actually pretty great. I love it even more, and now I really want to explore where this can take me. And in the meantime, soccer was becoming less fun, baseball was becoming less fun. I had some coaches weren't any good. Honestly, the coaches uninspired me from those sports, so it really wasn't that difficult of a decision to drop them. And then basketball was the next one to go. That was a harder choice because my dad was,
Was he coaching too? Was he coaching you at all ever in some of your leagues?
Yeah, through basketball, yeah.
Yeah.
But he wasn't a tennis guy. I don't come from a tennis family.
Okay.
I really broke the mold in my family going the tennis path. So when I finally got over that hurdle and decided that I had to focus on tennis if I wanted to get to the college level, at that point I was behind. So I knew. From...
you knew you wanted to play a sport at the college level, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
And again, I always loved tennis, but I just didn't know until that point that it was going to be the one that I was going to go with. And, when I started to have success,
What grade in high school? Was it ninth
This would
grade?
have been like sophomore year.
Sophomore
of high
year?
School,
Okay, so you were 15, 16 years old.
Right, but again, like I was behind my peers. Everybody else that had been playing, nationals, USTA tournament stuff. Like I wasn't involved in that stuff.
Right. Okay.
So
I think you
late to the game.
You and I like share that
Yeah.
background a little bit, but in different ways. Like for me, I grew up playing ice hockey, and then a lot of baseball were my bigger sports. My parents played none of them. They're just, immigrants, but coming to Canada, we're like, we're in, Kingston outside of Toronto. Montreal is a big hockey town. So like that was similar to you having the basketball, like that was what you do. And that's what my dad, when he came to Montreal, grew up watching hockey and was like, I want my son to be a hockey player. But then opposite to you grew and had your awkward stage, and I didn't grow, and I had my situation, which kind of led me to tennis. So both of us kind of led us to a pathway. I think we both made the same decision. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is like, if I want to play a sport at the next level, like this is my best opportunity, right?
Yeah, I mean, it did get to a point where, probably because I was a little bit behind everybody else, but I do think at some point it is good to specialize. I would never say it's good to only play tennis your entire life.
Right.
I think playing those team sports was crucial to my development as obviously a well-rounded, teammate.
Yeah.
And somebody who was prepared to come in and be a leader. That's difficult, if you only play tennis, which is inherently an individual sport, right?
Yeah.
So knowing how to join a team, especially when you're, looking to join a college team, it can be a different thing for somebody who's only ever played the junior circuit, only done the individual tournaments.
Yeah.
So that is a quality that I look for in players. I don't say that you have to have played team sports in addition to tennis, but you got to have some exposure to working in a group setting. And that makes a difference. So ultimately made me a more well-rounded, I think, candidate that was attracted to some coaches, and some universities that I got looks from coming out of high school. But
did you ever feel like you needed to learn that step of teammate, like this is a team sport, and no, right? Because I didn't have that problem either, because like we both grew up playing team sports. It was natural. It was like you play your role, just like you said with basketball. Like you're a point guard, you have a job, you have a role, and you're not always taking the ball to the basket. I think that's tough for kids that just play tennis, and everyone's gonna have their own opinions, but I totally believe that playing team sports in that atmosphere makes that easy transition from the junior to college like so much more for tennis players who you can sometimes see like have never done that, and then you're like, how do you not know that? But then you can't blame them because they haven't played those team sports. So like I think that's like huge piece of development is for parents especially to learn, right? Like and for the players too. Like you play another sport. It doesn't even have to be at a high level. Just play other sports because it helps you as becoming a well-rounded athlete, right?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely always recommend it, but one way or another, you'll still learn, when you come to college. I mean, it's still something that we work on regardless.
You'll figure it out.
I have guys that played 5 sports growing up, guys that played just tennis, and it's a piece that we work on in building, because every year you have to build a new team dynamic anyways.
Right.
And identifying roles for everybody, and improving the camaraderie and the individual relationships within the team dynamic. That's something that we have to work on every year.
For sure.
Regardless, so
Okay, so tell me now about your recruiting process. So like by 10th grade or so, sophomore year, you're deciding that, okay, I'm going to focus on tennis. When did you start? Yeah, how did your recruiting go?
Sure.
When did you start, and how did it work out? Did anybody help you along the way?
Yeah, my junior year. It was junior year. And again, my parents were not tennis people.
Right.
So we were kind of figuring it out. They relied heavily on me, to go out there and find the best places to train in the area. They were supportive. As we'll support you through this, obviously financially, but we don't know where to send you. So I had to kind of put my ear to the ground and find out where the best local players were training, go sign up for those clinics myself, find the tournaments myself, and then extending into the college recruitment process. I was the firstborn on the eldest. They didn't have any experience anyways, my parents, that is, looking for colleges. So we hired College Prospects of America.
Okay.
At the time, they were kind of one of the bigger recruiting services. So an agent came, met with us, went through that process, made a video, put a profile together, and then they sent it out.
And you found that to be helpful for your process?
I needed it, yeah.
Yeah.
I was somebody
because you had no idea what was going on, right? For the most part?
Yeah. We were just, a more naive family. Again, it was our first time through.
Yep.
And then, not having as much experience in the tennis scene was another piece of that. But also needing to get exposure to more schools because I wasn't on the national scene at that point in my career.
So what was your process to get noticed and to get the exposure, not being a national player, but probably being a national level player, right? But not playing the actual tournaments?
I was somebody that was obviously like a raw talent, like a multi-sport athlete that was, my trajectory was pretty high in a short amount of time. But that exposure came pretty much purely through the recruiting service. I mean, they put me out there.
Okay.
So all the hits that I was getting were from coaches that had received my video and my profile and reached out to me.
Right.
And then I was able to build a list from there.
So they were telling people, here's a great, athlete, a little bit of a raw talent.
I had a sectional ranking,
I
had a video. So that was.
And then it was up to you to sell them the rest of the way, right? Like,
that's right. Yeah. Then I took visits and met.
Do you think you had to work a little bit harder to sell yourself or be a little bit sharper with the process because you were feeling like you were maybe a step behind, or did it come
fair.
pretty easy?
No, yeah? I mean, I definitely felt. I had a sense that I was behind. I knew by the time I really decided to pour my energies into tennis exclusively.
Yeah.
Like, just even based on the players locally, I knew where I was. I knew, I could tell where I was raw in some ways. Guys that were more polished than me that were out there also going on to the nationals and playing. But, when I would play them in the local scene, I was kind of this upstart type.
Yeah.
That would, I would give them fits. So I knew that I was close, but I still never accessed that next level of play.
Yeah.
My parents didn't take me to national clay courts or Easter.
Was that a personal choice at that point, or were you not just playing the tournaments?
I just was. I don't know that I would have qualified anyways at that point. It was just a little late in the game.
Right.
So I improved every week up through the time I graduated college. I was only going up. So if I had started my timeline 5 years earlier, I probably would have been much
different path.
I think it would have been a much different path. But
so ultimately, where'd you end up? Because I know you transferred, right? So
I got recruited by probably a solid handful of schools in the Northeast generally that I was mostly focused on. I had a rough idea of what I wanted to study. So I was looking liberal arts. Monmouth University was the school that I ended up going to visit over on the coast of New Jersey.
Yeah.
Beautiful private school, like right on the beach, really nice campus, mid-sized, mid-major D1. I knew that I wanted to try to go D1 at that point. I knew I wanted to try to get a scholarship.
Right.
I thought that was, I could do that much for my parents at that point. Because they really poured a lot into me over the course of a few years, 2-3 years. So, obviously wanted to try to pay them back a bit.
Of course.
And that was an opportunity that I got. Their coach called me up, and I went to visit. Liked the campus, liked the facility. Offered me some money.
Did you do a combination of academic, athletic?
Yeah.
So were you a good student?
Yeah, I was a good student coming out of high school. Yeah.
Okay.
But ultimately, after playing there my freshman year, it's just, it turned out to be not the right fit.
For what reasons?
Ultimately, I think socially it was a big commuter school that I didn't realize.
Okay.
It was more East Coast kids, and I was an outlier being from, Western Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I didn't know anybody else. I made friends on the team, obviously, but the campus really emptied out on weekends, and I don't know.
So it wasn't a great resident school for that fact.
Right, and I just didn't, it was something that I probably wouldn't have realized otherwise. I had to feel it.
Yeah.
To see, see how it would go. And I actually had plans to go back my sophomore year, but I had an opportunity come up at Duquesne University, where I transferred to.
Right in your neighborhood?
Right in my backyard, yeah. I mean, I'd heard that they had a bunch of guys transfer out, and so there was some openings, and
And how'd you go about that transfer? I mean, was it easy with your old coach and moving over as well?
I mean, it was obviously hard leaving my coach at Monmouth. He wasn't happy about it, but I knew the Duquesne coach from when I was a kid. He was the local pro as well.
Okay.
So, I went through the formal channels and contacted him and said, hey, I'm curious to see what you've got, like what kind of opportunity is there. And, so we opened up that line of communication, and over the course of a few months, May, June, July a little bit, it just kind of came together and ultimately felt right. And so I went for it. And I ended up being, much happier as a result, being able to come back closer to home. And I had buddies that were going to like the University of Pittsburgh, which is right down the road. I had friends that go to Penn State at the time, so it just felt right. I think it was a little more comfortable coming back closer to home. And
how good was that, or how did you sort of view that transfer and those experiences? Did you view it at the time like, you made a mistake and you wish you had spent all 4 years somewhere else? Or did you view it like, this was good, I had fun at both places and I learned a lot, and like today I just know a little bit more? There's always ups and downs in everyone's careers, right? Like, I mean...
Yeah, no, I don't really have any regrets. I mean, given the way that things worked out, it was for the best at the time.
Yeah.
I don't really see another path or another way that things could have worked out for me, really much better.
It's kind of the natural course of life.
It was just like a series of decisions that led down that path.
Because I know a lot of people look at like transferring as like a failure, and even like when if that happens, when players like come up to me, or I'm sure you've talked to players where they are similar situation to you, and then it's like, you may actually end up going somewhere for a year or two, and you may outgrow it based on the fact that or you may not like it. I mean, you're going to do as much research as you can, but with your options or limited options, you can call it based on where you're at today and your trajectory of growth. Like, it's not really a negative thing to look at, is it? I mean, I would see the upside on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing to remember is you can never really predict how things are going to go. I mean, there's so many variables when you leave high school and go into college. There's so many things that are thrown at you. I mean, you could feel, you're trying to base a 4-year decision on potentially 1 or 2 visits. In high school, maybe you take an unofficial, check out the campus, and then you come back for an official visit, stay for a night or two. It's not, that's not everything. I mean,
right.
So you're trying to base a 4-year decision on, a really small sample size. And for some people, you just overlook something or something changes.
There's an element of chance, right?
Of course there is. So I would never tell anybody to feel like they failed in some form or fashion because of a transfer.
Right. It just happens.
It's just, absolutely.
So then how'd you get into, like, you had a good college career, you enjoyed yourself. How did you get into coaching then? What was the turning point there that I was like, oh, maybe I want to be a college coach?
Sure. So I come from a family of educators and teachers, and so it's definitely like innate to me. It's in my blood, like, to want to work with people and impart knowledge in some form or fashion. Initially I was thinking I was going to go into secondary education. I got my degree in history, so that's kind of what I was angling towards.
Yeah.
But as soon as I graduated, I didn't want to give up tennis completely. And there's an opportunity to coach a high school team locally, that I jumped on that. I said, I'm going to, see how that goes, see how I feel about that. And it was a good learning experience, got my foot in the door loosely. And then the following year, I got a call from CMU, from the head coach at the time. Had an opportunity to come on as an assistant, and so I finished the high school season with the team that I was working, and jumped on the college opportunity. So it was just kind of a natural progression, really. Just got into it and never really.
You loved it from the beginning.
Yeah, I obviously did. Yeah, it just stuck with me. It always felt like a good fit. It always felt like I just kind of knew what I was doing, and I could, grow in my role.
Okay. And you've been at Carnegie for how long now?
Yeah, I started fall of 2008, so 10 years.
10 years? Okay. It's a long
And
time.
it's been like a natural progression the whole way. I mean, I started off, the role initially was part-time assistant for men and women, and that was for a couple of years, and then they made it full-time, and it was full-time for a handful of years, and then got promoted to associate head. And then last year we decided to split the team, so I'm now the head coach of the men, and the women's team has their head coach as well. So just kind of really a natural progression, and I stuck with it.
Yeah.
I always loved being a part of CMU. I mean, I knew from really from the beginning that I was in a pretty unique place that had just a ton of growth potential.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you've done really well with the teams too. You guys have really
team's
done well.
been very competitive, and I feel like we're still coming up. There's no doubt about it. And
Yeah.
we're going against some like historically strong programs. There's a lot of things that we have to overcome, and we've been hacking our way up the ladder for my career really. Just improving just about every year. So.
Right. Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about your recruiting as a coach and your coaching philosophies and stuff. So rumor has it that you are one of the best hustlers when it comes to college recruiting, often found at Starbucks and locations, putting in your homework, meeting with recruits the day before, a lot of noise from the college coaches, basically commending you about that hustle, something you and I share. I'm that type of person too that goes out and makes sure that I get the most out of the situation that I'm in. And so talk about how you've been successful. You've had some great success recruiting some great players, getting them to come to a great school. Of course, that has a bit to do with it, but it's the coaches that really can do it. So what's your secret sauce there?
Well, I'd have to, want to be careful about taking too much credit. I mean, a lot of it does have to do with the school itself. The tide has risen, like the Carnegie Mellon tide has risen. I'm just a boat along that tide that rises up. So I recognize that, and I feel like my job is to capitalize on that. People know about Carnegie Mellon.
Right.
Most people just know about it in some form or fashion. So it's my job to capitalize on that and say, well, here's what we're really about, and here's what we can offer you specifically. And then let's talk about, some of your unique individual interests, and let me explain to you why you would be a good fit for us. And I do try to be diligent about filtering out, people that I think would be a good fit for us. It's a layered process. Starts by casting a pretty wide net, but
because you guys are Division III, right?
Division III,
so no scholarships athletically, academic scholarships, but probably pretty tough to get at a school like Carnegie, right? If I'm not wrong. Or do you a lot of your financial aid's available, but academics, scholarships per se, versus financial aid, and then the kids, depending on if they qualify, right, get the financial aid. So how do you sell a program that has a great reputation but may come at a high cost? How do you sell that to players versus your story, which was my parents put in a lot of money into my tennis and helping me develop as a player. I want to pay them back some way. So what if that sort of conversation comes up, or how do you battle that at your school?
Yeah, you have to look
program?
Through the looking glass the other way. You have to project over a longer term, look at the return on the investment.
Okay.
If you can shoulder the upfront cost, then it's going to pay you back far more than you realize.
Yeah.
Based on a number of things, and the school puts out plenty of data on that.
Just give me some examples of that.
Starting salaries for recent graduates.
Okay.
We could just show you a list of companies that are hiring our graduates and where they're starting, where they're entering the workforce, at what level, and compare that across the board to our peer institutions, and then obviously lesser institutions, maybe some of your mid-major D1s. We're very much in the tier of the Ivy Leagues. I make sure people understand that we have programs that rank higher than Ivy Leagues. I mean, everybody I think just knows Ivy League. That's just kind of a term that's been out there that anybody off the street can know that. But still, could be some people out there that aren't just quite sure exactly what tier Carnegie Mellon is in. And
do they feel like it's Ivies, and if I can't get into Ivy, I'm going to a school like Carnegie, or is it like you trying to, maybe that might be the perceived notion too initially, but is it that some programs, like you say, might even be better, and it's your job to educate them and give them that information?
That happens a little more so from the tennis side of things.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, we're not as good tennis-wise as Ivy Leagues, but, we'll get players that could compete for a spot on an Ivy roster. But academically, no. I mean, academically, we're a first choice school.
Okay.
I mean, if you really study us, if you really, get, I would say, more nuanced into your research and your decision-making process, then you're going to realize that, hey, we do some things that are pretty particular and unique that could speak to you directly better than a Cornell or, a Yale or a Dartmouth, for example. I mean, again, I think when you get to a certain tier, then you have everybody that's really good at a lot of things, but some schools are just better in specific areas than others. So, a pretty astute recruit is going to figure that out. And then that's also part of my job too, is to help them figure out why we're actually a better fit for them than they may realize based on what they want to study.
Yeah. So what do you think like part of the success is then? Is it, I often notice like working with a lot of players, being around them a lot, families in general, that when they're presented to school and they're talking to a coach, they're not always getting all that data, that information, which I think, and like you're describing, is vital for making decisions and defining it. So like, is it that you feel like you're organized, that you can present that data, that your school has that data? Like what gives you that opportunity to do that?
It's all that. I mean, we have been doing this for enough years now to, have a pretty good process in place for providing information, and I try to tell recruits to be as proactive as possible, and it's definitely a key piece of advice that I would give anybody, is to like. So
if a recruit doesn't get that information to compare against what you've given them, they should be asking that coach for that information, right? And doing that research.
It's a big decision. I mean, when you're generally, the type of recruit that we're fielding is being sought after by a lot of similar schools, right?
Yeah.
A lot of our peers. So again, that's where you get into the more nuanced discussion about, well, why specifically are you also considering the University of Chicago or Washington University in St. Louis or Cornell? I mean, let's really think about, what it is that you want to study.
Yeah. And if you feel like a recruit might be better off somewhere else, will you let him go? Or will you suggest that, or will you still, because you have a job, right? Like 100%. If we're speaking honestly, you have a job. You have to get the best players you can who can get into the school and build the best team. That's why you have your job. So, where's the fine line on that?
No, I mean, what it comes down to is I have to believe that they can succeed at Carnegie Mellon.
Right.
That's most important. It's if a guy is going to have a hard time getting in for whatever reason, academically, if we push too much, like if it's too much of a stretch, then we could be setting them up for failure. It's a tough internal battle for me, because I want to feel that I can help anybody get it through, survive and come out with that just world-class degree. But for some guys, it's just not the right fit. For some guys, it just might be a little too much. They might not be able to handle the balance.
I think that's where your hustle comes in too, because you're not really afraid then, because you've got so many people you're able to go to and talk to, that you make sure you cover yourself and you're helping the kid at the same time, right?
Right, but we are a pretty specific type of a school.
Right.
And so on one hand, like, it does help me filter down to the really, appropriate and like essential group of guys that are actually good candidates.
Okay.
I could talk to a guy that has phenomenal grades and isn't worried about a scholarship, but wants to be a poet. We're not often getting people.
That's not Carnegie?
No, I mean,
no,
it's not so much. I mean, we do have really phenomenal performing arts and drama.
Yeah.
We do, but again, like those type of students aren't also balancing an athletic career.
Right.
And that's even more specific.
Right.
On the other end of the spectrum, Yeah, I mean, we're predominantly a STEM school, so I know that. You know, you have to be good at math.
Yeah.
Obviously, science, technology. I mean, those are our stronger areas. We're a bigger research-based university, so you know that kind of separates us from your smaller liberal arts schools up in the Northeast, for example, that you know are just a very different type of school and type of experience.
So people that are coming to you generally will have some research. If not, you're educating them, and there's a specific pathway for them that brings them towards Carnegie, and you're quickly able to find that out. And I think that's fair for a lot of schools, right? Like, you know, especially high academic schools that are tough to get into, Division III programs fall into that category, right? So talk to me about now your coaching philosophy, how you work, you know, what you do. You know, what's your goal with your players? I mean, they're not coming on an athletic scholarship, but they are coming with other scholarship opportunities or financial aid opportunities. You're still looking to have a very competitive program, which you do. You still want to teach them all the same things that a Division I, II, III, NAIA, JUCO program is going to teach. You still want to win a national championship. So what is it that the boys are getting out of your program? What is it that you want to teach them after the 4 years and say, you know, that 4 years with Coach Belmont was some of the best years of my life?
Sure. So the thing to remember is, you know, the type of guys that I'm bringing in every year are just high achievers. They're high achievers in the classroom, and they're high achievers on the tennis court too. I mean, I'm getting top 200, top 250 nationally ranked guys every year, and I'm getting guys that probably have straight A's and really strong scores. So it's a pretty unique mold of student athlete that I'm going after right there. So thankfully, you know, it makes my job a little bit easier on those two fronts. You know, I will
getting guys that are what you're saying is you're getting guys that are already prepared.
They're definitely prepared to
competitive.
Come in and assimilate to our culture. You know, it's a notch above from what they're used to. It's
they're motivated.
A little bit harder, but they're motivated. They have to be motivated. They have to love what they do. They have to want to do well in class so that then they can put more into the tennis court. Okay, so that helps. That definitely makes my job easier.
Okay.
But what I have to do is also help them manage like all the things that are being thrown at them throughout the school year. You know, finding that right balance between school and tennis. You know, my number one goal is to have everybody do well in class, get the good grades. If they're struggling, you know, in school for whatever reason, then we just have to scale tennis back a little bit.
Yeah.
That's okay. There's going to be rough patches for everybody.
Yeah.
Where a week where a couple of exams converge on the same day, like those things happen. I'm always going to work with them in those areas. That's number one. So it's just very important that recruits understand that like I'm not going to let you fail. I'm going to help you get through it because that's the most important thing. I'm not worried about sending them to the pro tour. I'm just not. Okay? But, you know, it does take that, like I said, that special brand of motivation and that passion for the game that motivates these guys to do well in school so that we put more into tennis and then we can be super competitive on the court. And, you know, again, thankfully I don't have to motivate that much. I try to sort that out in the recruiting process and find the guys that have that quality. On top of those things though, you know, one of the things that I'm definitely passionate about is growing these guys into just complete men, like mature, well-rounded. They're going to be solid, healthy contributors to society when they leave me and enter the workforce. And, you know, we're going to grow them into leaders and, you know, just responsible adults. I get a lot of those guys already, but I do think it's a strength of mine that I can help, you know, grow them even more and round them out.
Okay.
It's very important to me.
Sure. No, I think that's huge because, like, at the end of the day, when guys like us have graduated and now look back on it, because it's been a number of years, is like, you know, what did I get out of it? Like, great experience. You remember your coaches, you remember your teammates and all that stuff, and then it probably, for most people, translates into who they become. You know, for me, like, a lot of my success or opportunities have come because I've made those friends along the way, right? And they're now in roles and relationships.
Something I learned a lot about from my college coach, the importance of building relationships. And that's every relationship. It's not just like with your teammates, that's with everyone else that you meet during your time. It's such a
You promote that a lot?
Time, 100%. I want my guys to network. I don't want them to live with each other freshman year. I want to live with somebody else, make a new circle of friends, see where that takes you.
Because you're going to be with your team. I felt the same way.
Of course, you're going to be with your team. So like those relationships are fine. Those will be taken care of. But again, it's such like an opportunity, like these 4 years that you have, maybe 5 or 6, depending on what kind of graduate work you do. But call it 4 years that you're going to build some of the most lasting and impactful relationships that you're ever going to build in your life. And at a place like Carnegie Mellon, where you have so many unique individuals from all different backgrounds pursuing all different things, having a network where you can just all of a sudden realize, hey, this guy can help me out with this idea that I just had in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just so important. And I see the type of stuff, the type of collaboration that's going on around our campus. And I just want my guys to capitalize on that. And that's, sometimes you remember coming out of high school as a freshman, I know I was in a shell.
Yeah.
I was very much an introvert. It took me a while to come out. It definitely took a coach and some teammates to help me grow.
Yeah, everybody's, I think, somewhat quiet, especially when you're going to a new place or a new country.
But looking back now at that period of time, I wish I'd come out soon. I wish I had been out of my shell sooner and been more engaging and met more people. I have great, solid friends that I made in college, but I know that I could have made more if I put myself out there. And it's not an easy thing to do.
Right,
it's
exactly.
Really not. For some people it's natural, but for most people it's not, I would say.
Yeah.
So I do believe that's an area where I can help a lot, and I see so much value in it. You get into the workforce, and it's definitely a lot about who you know, just as much as about, what you know. And
right.
You hear that. It's a little cliche, but it's true.
Yeah.
So the networking, the relationship building, what makes me happy or what will make me happy someday is, when I've been doing this for long enough and I have guys that can look back over a period of several years and they'll be able to look back and say, Coach taught me about these things, about these core, relationship building things, and, I just want to have probably more of a deeper impact.
Okay.
4 years
Fair enough.
is a nice chunk of time. So that's where I get the most out of it, I would say.
Okay.
Of course I want everybody to do well on the court. I want everybody to have a 4.0 GPA. That's all really important.
Yeah.
But I also want to, I want somebody 20 years from now to call me and ask how I'm doing and say, hey, I was thinking about you.
Yeah.
Building that core relationship. That's what drives me for sure.
That's awesome.
Matters the most to me. So.
No, that's awesome. All right, let's finish off with two questions. Okay, the first one is, what was your favorite college tennis memory as a student athlete?
So the best memories are probably from our spring break trips. Generally, we would go to Florida, and just great memories of cooking dinners together in the townhouse after a brutal 4-hour match in the heat. Just hanging out with the guys, going swimming. It was just great bonding. I had 3 of those trips, sophomore, junior, and senior year. And all of my best memories, I would say, the stories we tell were from those trips. I mean, we had some other fun road trips too, but the travel in general with the teams.
Tons of great memories there,
those
right?
are the things that stand out to me for sure. Yeah, that's when you can bond.
And would you guys go to Orlando, Miami?
Yeah, we were in the Orlando area.
Okay. And I know a lot of teams still go there.
Yeah,
I mean, more and more every year.
100%. Yeah, that's definitely one of the popular paths for I think for a lot of programs to go. But those stand out to me for sure.
All right, and the other question that we want to finish off with, which I think is ask every college coach, is what advice would you give student athletes and and their families listening to the show? Be
proactive, be engaging, stay on top of the process because it's fluid, it moves quickly. You got to remember that everybody's juggling a lot of balls, not just you as the recruit with all the schools you're considering, but all the coaches of all those schools juggling multiple recruits. Sometimes being more proactive, forcing yourself into the attention of the coach can make a difference. And not only that, like just having a truly complete understanding of the schools that you're looking at. Just really know what you're getting into, so you can feel good about your decision. You know, I hate the idea of recruits feeling pressured into making a decision. It's not part of my philosophy. I'm never going to give a recruit a hard deadline. Like, you have to decide by here. It's too big of a decision. It's too important. Tennis is, you know, college tennis is going to be the natural resolution to most guys' careers.
Yeah.
And just so keep it in context, look at it that way, but let the school be the driving, you know, factor for you, and just be proactive.
Perfect.
So that's it.
That's awesome. Some great piece of advice from Coach Belmont. Thanks for being on the show. Thanks for sharing your, your thoughts, your advice, your background, everything. So you can find his information on the school's website and probably on social channels, and we'll link up on the show. Shoot him an email, and recruiting needs and stuff will be available everywhere, including email and on our IMR site. So stay tuned. Thanks.
Thank you.